Hi, everyone, and welcome to Brian's Horror Corner. I'm your host, Brian, and welcome to this classic Twilight Zone series review video. We're going to be taking a look at season four today. I reviewed the first three seasons, they're up on my channel if you want to check those out. But today we're going to go ahead and take a look at season four. You can see I have the Blu ray collection here, all five seasons on Blu ray. So, very good, very nice collection there. So yeah, season four. So just some general thoughts about season four. So of course this is the famous or infamous, depending on your point of view, season of the Twilight Zone, the original series, and that they changed the format from a half hour episodes to a full hour episodes, and so they cut the as a result they cut the amount of episodes in half for this season. So where you get like 36, 37 in previous seasons, you get 18 in season four. So that's obviously the biggest, most notable difference of season four of the Twilight Zone. Also, the opening theme song. The song is the same, like the music is the same, but they have different imagery, which is actually my favorite imagery so far of all the openings, where they show you like the window that breaks and the like the ear and the eye and everything, where season three had the spiral, the black and white spiral. This actually sort of they put up images on the screen that Rod Serling's describing as the opening theme song is playing of the Twilight Zone. So I think those are pretty much the biggest differences. Obviously, the hour-long format instead of the half hour and half as many episodes on the season are that's the thing that stands out the most. But well, let's just go ahead and get into it. I will say that season four, despite having half as many episodes, and I will give you my thoughts at the end of this video, what I think about the hour versus half hour long episodes. I don't want to do it up front because it might kind of give away. But actually, to be honest, out of 18 episodes, if I were watching a marathon of season four, I could put on 14. 14 out of 18 are go-to watches for me from season four. So that's a pretty good percentage. I don't know what it breaks down to, 75 maybe. I think it's something like that. Um, so for a season that not everybody, but some people kind of poo-poo because of the change in format. I actually enjoy 14 out of 18 episodes. At least enjoy them enough where if I was doing a marathon, as I said, I could put them on. Um, so yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. Same format as the other previous three seasons that I reviewed. Most overrated episode of the season, most underrated episode of the season, my bottom three or worst episodes of the season, along with a dishonorable mention, and then my top five episodes of the season are my favorites, including an honorable mention. I thought about just doing three and three since there's only 18 episodes, but I was able to come up with five episodes that I really enjoy from this season to make a top five, and I'd rather be consistent and stay with the same format. So well, let's go ahead and get started. We'll start first of all with the most overrated episode, as I see it for season four. And it was kind of hard to come up with this because I don't really know what people consider to be great from season four. And the ones that I do know are considered to be great, I can't say are overrated, as you'll see later in this video. But I'm going to go with the episode called Mute. This is episode five of season four that aired on January 31st, 1963. This is about the mute telepathic girl played by Anne Gillian, who is the sole survivor of a fire that kills her parents. Um, just like my other overrated episodes, I like this episode. This is one of the 14 that I can put on if I were doing a marathon, a season. Let me get my words right. If I was doing a marathon of season four, Mute would be included in that. However, I know a lot of people talk about how great this episode is. I think it's a good episode. It's sort of a sweet, happy ending episode. But as a Twilight Zone episode, I'm not really sure it's all that strong. Not as strong as some of the reviews I've read about it. I do think Anne Gillian's really good in this episode. One of the better child performances that I've seen on television in an episode of any kind. But the story itself, I mean, it's just kind of there. It's good. It's entertaining enough, but I don't. It doesn't really blow my hair back too much. Um, it's a good episode that I'd watch, but I have to say it's a little overrated for some of the reviews I've been reading about it, where people are talking about this is maybe the greatest episode of season four, one of the great episodes of the Twilight Zone series. I don't quite see that, although like I said, I do enjoy the episode. So that's my most overrated for season four is the episode Mute. Um, And then my most underrated for season four is one that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, and I really was into it. I really thought it was great. And that's episode 11 that aired on March 14th, 1963, written by Rod Serling. Um, and that's called The Parallel. So this is one about an astronaut who returns from a space flight to find things have changed during his absence. So he basically comes back and most everything is the same, but there's just some small differences that he notices and ultimately ends up getting bigger. I thought this was a very clever episode, very well written, very well acted, especially by Steve Forrest, who plays the astronaut, sort of the main character. Yeah, I don't know why this one isn't talked about more. I really enjoyed it. I know there's some repetition in terms of the storyline that they go through with the episode, and some people say it's a little padded, but I don't know. I didn't think this episode was one of the more padded ones of season four. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was very entertaining and kind of terrifying at the same time. Just the idea of it. So yeah, the parallel. That's my most underrated for season four that I just don't hear a lot of people talk about. So now we'll go ahead and get into my bottom three, starting with my dishonorable mention. And my dishonorable mention is going to be episode four that aired on January 24th, 1963, again written by Rod Serling, called He's Alive. This is the one about the struggling leader of a small group of neo Nazis who receives advice from a mysterious stranger about gaining followers. Um, yeah, I don't know. This episode is a little too preachy to me. Well, some people would argue it has relevance. It had relevance then, it has relevance now. My big problem with it is the mysterious stranger, as they call it in this episode. Who that mysterious stranger ends up being is pretty obvious. And to me, it kind of cheapens the episode a little. But I know this was 1963, and he was still kind of fresh in everybody's mind. I'm not going to tell you who he is. You can probably figure it out. But I don't know. This episode just wasn't that pleasant to watch either. And I know not every Twilight Zone episode has to be fun or pleasant, but I don't know. This one just didn't really do much for me. And Rod Serling's ending narration was, I'm not usually one to say he's too preachy with his episodes, but this was one where he did touch the preachiness just a little too much for me. So, again, it's not a horrible episode. That's why it's my dishonorable mention. He's Alive, episode four. That's my dishonorable mention. Now we get into my bottom three, or the ones, the three worst. I hate saying worst because some people might really like these episodes, and hey, if you do, more power to you. I'm glad for you. So number three, as far as the worst episode is gonna be one that's towards the end of the season. Episode 15 that aired on April 18th, 1963, written by Reginald Rose. Excuse me, I had to swallow there. And that's The Incredible World of Horus Ford. Um, This is one about the middle-aged toy designer played by Pat Hingle, who goes back to his childhood when he visits his old neighborhood. It sounds like an interesting premise on the surface, and I thought it was when I read it and when I watched it. But as I got into the episode, my big problem with this episode is Pat Hingle, who plays this toy designer known as Horus Ford, is just not that likable. He's not that sympathetic, and you needed to have sympathy for him to actually enjoy and like this episode and for the episode to work for you, at least in my opinion. And it just doesn't work. And I don't know if it's his acting so much as it's just the writing of it. I just don't think they write it as a very sympathetic character. There's a lot of this one I do feel is padded. One of the complaints about season four episodes is there's some extra padding that goes on because they have to try to get 50 minutes out of it or whatever it is. This one I do think would have been more effective as a half-hour episode. Again, the episode's not horrible. It's an interesting idea, an interesting concept. It still has some relevance, but the execution of it really fell flat for me, and that's mostly because of our main character, Horace Ford. So that's my number three least favorite of season four. Number two is going to be the last episode of the season, which I almost feel was just kind of thrown in to get a rounded number of 18. This is the one called The Bard that aired on May 23rd, 1963. An inspiring screenwriter conjures up the spirit of William Shakespeare to help him on his television script. Yeah, this one I was pretty bored with. Probably the most bored I was in any season four episode, and in contention for one of the most bored episodes. Excuse me, getting over a cold or COVID here. I'm not sure, but um, it's just one of the most boring episodes of the Twilight Zone. I just couldn't get into it, and there's a lot of not much really happens. It's just I mean, I'm not the biggest Bill Shakespeare follower, or I don't want to say fan because I know who he is, obviously, and stuff. But I just don't think it's that interesting of a concept, and the execution was even less interesting. So yeah, I had a hard time getting through this episode, The Bard, the last episode of season 4. That's going to come in at my number 2. But number 1, the worst episode or my least favorite of season 1 has to be. Let me see if I can find it here. Oh, episode 12 that aired on March 21st, 1963, written by John Furia Jr., entitled I Dream of Genie. Another Genie episode by the Twilight Zone making my worst list. This is about the office worker played by Howard Morris who acquires a lamp with a genie, who's played by Jack Albertson, who offers him a wish. Again, it tries to be a lighthearted, funny episode, and I didn't laugh at all during this episode. Maybe it worked better for the time. This one might be a little outdated, and this is definitely one that's padded. That probably would have gone by a little bit better had it been a half-hour episode. But yeah, that's my worst or weakest episode for season 4 for me is I Dream of Genie. Just not a very good episode. That's one that I'll definitely skip for any season 4 marathon I watch going forward. So now we get to my top 5, including my honorable mention, on to bigger and better things for season 4. So my honorable mention is going to be another episode that doesn't get talked about too much. Episode 6 that aired on February 7th, 1963, a Richard Matheson episode entitled Death Ship. So this is the one 3 astronauts played by Jack Klugman, Ross Martin, and Fred Beer, who discover exact duplicate of their spaceship and themselves on a distant planet. Yeah, this episode's really good. I was into it from beginning to end. I think it's because of the performances by the 3 actors. They really sell it. If the performances weren't good or it wasn't well acted, this episode wouldn't have worked as well. But you really feel these characters. You feel for them. And even though you could say the twist or kind of what's going on might be kind of obvious halfway through the episode, the idea of it, I think, is vallied around a little bit even before they reveal it at the end. It's brought up, and Jack Klugman's character, who's the captain of the ship, just won't hear of it, and it's got a really good twist. Like I said, might be a little predictable to some people, but I really enjoyed the episode. It's definitely an episode I had no trouble getting through. Maybe just a tad padded, but not to the point where it hurt the episode enough, in my opinion, not to have it in my top 5. So yeah, Death Ship, episode 6 from season 4. That's my number 5 best episode of season 4. My number 4 favorite episode of season 4 is going to be the 3rd episode of the season, entitled Valley of the Shadow. This is written by Charles Beaumont once again, aired on January 17th, 1963. This is the one about the newspaper reporter who discovers a small town with an incredibly advanced technology that they wish to keep secret. So yeah, this is another really well written, very interesting episode with a great performance by the lead, Ed Nelson. Um, I forget who the female is, but she's pretty beautiful in this episode, which was another reason it was easy to stay into. But it's really just a well written episode. Um, my only problem that I have with this episode is the ending, and I think other people have talked about this too. It kind of does have a cop out ending, kind of a cheap ending that I think they could have done a little bit more with the build up that they had in this episode. That really is the only reason it's not higher than this. I mean, it could be in the top 3 easily if it would have had a more rock solid ending, in my opinion. But that being said, I still really enjoy Valley of the Shadow. Definitely one of the better season 4 hour long episodes. Just very enjoyable. Moving on to number 3 of my favorites for season 4 is going to be the very first episode of this season, entitled "In His Image," written again by Charles Beaumont. Not ironically. This aired on January 3rd, 1963. This is about a man that's confused by a murderous impulse and a loss of his memory. And this is another one with a great lead performance by George Gizzard. It's also a very well written episode, which we should expect nothing less from Charles Beaumont. But this has like the best unfolding story, not just of the hour long episodes, I think, but of any Twilight Zone episode. The story really unfolds well. It's well paced. I never was bored during this episode. I didn't think it was padded at all. The chemistry that George Gizzard this man has with the gal in this episode is his girlfriend. I forget the actress's name. It's not listed here. They have really good chemistry. You really feel for them, her and him. And of course, it's got a really great twist in the end, which I did not see coming. I do not think it's a predictable twist. So yeah, this is a really solid episode in his image. Really enjoyable season 4 episode. That's going to be my number 3. Um, oh, you know what? I skipped one. I'm sorry. I gave you my honorable mention as Death Ship. Um, Valley of the Shadow was my number 4. Um, in his image was number 3, but I skipped. Well, I mentioned it already. Number 5, I have the Parallel, the my most underrated episode of the season. So I kind of already talked about it, but this is about the astronaut who returns from a space flight to find things have changed or much different than he remembers. And he's a lot different than they remember, as it turns out. So sorry about that. Yeah, my most underrated episode of season 4 is also my number 5 favorite and best episode of season 4. Then number 4 is Valley of the Shadow. Favorite episode. Number 3 is In His Image. Okay, now we're up to date. So 2 more episodes to go. So my second favorite episode of season 4 almost could have easily been my first favorite episode, my number 1 for season 4. The 1 and 2 have razor thin difference here. I love both of these episodes. You'll probably hear them again in my final video for of the Twilight Zone series as far as my favorite episodes of the whole series. But number 2 is going to be episode 13 from season 4 that aired on April 4th, 1963, entitled The New Exhibit. This is about the Wax Museum curator, played excellently by Martin Balsam. Lovingly, Mountain's wax figures of 5 infamous killers in his basement after the museum discards them. When he loses his job, his enemies are mysteriously murdered. This is a fantastic Twilight Zone episode. Very creepy. Awesome performance by Martin Balsam. Um, this has very close to Norman Bates' Psycho, original Psycho kind of vibes. I mean, when I watched this episode, it definitely has that feel and those kind of vibes to it. I think Psycho came out in 1960. This was 1963, so I don't know if they drew from that. It almost feels like they did when you watch this episode without, obviously, it's not a carbon copy because you're talking about wax figures compared to a mother. But Martin Balsam reminded me a lot of Anthony Perkins, Norman Bates to a certain degree in this. Just a fantastic episode. From the beginning, we start in the Wax Museum to the end and everything. It's very well bookended. It's got a very nice twist at the end, and everything in between. Great dialogue, great performance, really by everybody, but Martin Balsam steals the show. Like I said, very close to being my number 1, and not surprising, this was also written by Charles Beaumont, if I haven't mentioned that. Definitely the best writer of the Twilight Zone series. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. I mean, Rod Serling's written some really great episodes, as you'll hear in a minute here, but Charles Beaumont seems to just own the writing of this series. So yeah, the new exhibit, just it's an absolute classic. Got to check that one out. I think that one's even underrated. I know people like it, but I still don't think it gives the love that I would give it. But my number 1, as much as I fought for the new exhibit, has to be episode 16 that aired on May 2nd, 1963. And this one was written by Rod Serling. And that's On Thursday We Leave for Home. Once again, the Martin Balsam was only outdone once the whole season 4 by the great performance, and that was by James Whitmore in this episode. This episode's about a group of space pioneers prepare to return a trip to Earth upon having failed a new established society on a distant planet, and the group's leader, played by James Whitmore, refuses to give up his authority. You have to see this episode. It's just so well written, so well delivered. James Whitmore. It's not just one of the best Twilight Zone performances. It's one of the best television performances in any show. I mean, he absolutely sells it. You're sympathetic for the character. You feel for him. You're mad at him at times. I mean, he brings it all in this episode. And it's just a fantastic episode. Very Twilight Zoney end. Not really much of a twist, but the final scene really leaves you kind of feeling like a punch in the stomach. That's as much as I'm going to explain. But on Thursday we leave for home. You'll be hearing this again before the end of the month, before I'm done with this series. Trust me. Just a very good Twilight Zone episode. James Whitmore knocks it out of the park. So yeah, that's my list, guys. Trying to keep this at 20 minutes or under, and I'm just approaching that. So That's my favorite episode of season 4. On Thursday, we leave for home. Thank you for watching this season 4 episode. Make sure to hit the like button, the little notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my great content, horror content, as well as the rest of this series. So thank you for watching. Have a great day. Stay scared. Bye.